Varsity kids.
Yeah. Because what?
Really shouldn't say that.
You can bring the taser with if you need. Okay, senior class trip. Can we have a motion to approve the itinerary and Mr. Felton as a chaperone?
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Heigl. Is there a second? I'll second it. Unless you want.
Was that Bob?
I'll second it. Any further discussion? No further discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Okay, great. On another note, our fundraiser, we had our last fundraiser, and the students did really well. You know, they earned a good share of this trip, so I think it's just helpful to encourage them to excel. So,
Do they have any more coming up, Julie, too? Is there any
Sorry,
more fundraising stuff they have coming in?
it's not for the senior class.
That's right, because
The
juniors not
juniors
taking over
will
the...
now, yeah. They'll have their, well, they switch groups of all the pizzas and,
And then all the concession stuff.
yes, yep, so, all right.
Do you think with having us, try to stay down on that dollar figure that has helped others in the class be able to go?
Yes,
Oh, good,
I do.
good. 'Cause
I've
that was
had
one of our
some-
biggest concerns.
Yeah, I've had some, I'm not gonna mention any names on here, but I know, there's several that have signed on after they knew what the cost was and that it was going to be lower than the 1,800 from last year.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
How many kids are in the class? You got 20 going?
There are, I think there's about 30, and then we've got about 5 or 6 foreign exchange students.
And you have a couple of new transfer
Yeah,
or
and none of those
so
are
they
going,
would've-
none of our four. The trip, April 15th through the 19th coincides with their trip in California. They have a KFS trip,
There's a
so
lot of option trips in there.
they couldn't go. It would have been nice to have, a few extra paying bodies going, but that's okay. This is,
Wonderful. Thank you.
all right, thank you. All right, can't back out of it now.
Presentation by Deb Griffiths on Schools for Equity in Education.
I'm going to start by showing you a video, and I would really invite you guys to come up just so you can see the TV screen. Can you see it go back there? We made this because we are all about equity at C, and I'll get into C in a minute.
I didn't see.
And we want to make this issue, we want to get parents and community members understanding what's going on. And so we made this, and then we have a backup presentation to talk about it in detail. But I'm going to start with the video.
One pizza, please, with the works.
Sure thing. And you look like you're from Businessville, is that right?
Yes, I'm from Businessville.
Right. That will be $10. Thank you very much.
Wow, that's great. I'll have a pizza with the works.
You live in hometown, don't you?
Yes, ma'am. Private beach from hometown, Minnesota.
A pizza with the works will cost you $30.
But I only have $10.
Well, for hometown folks, this is what you get for $10.
But that's not fair. He paid the same, and he got a much better pizza.
Well, that's our special formula here at Capital Pizza. You wouldn't accept this if a restaurant treated you this way. Yet this unfairness is real for a lot of school children and taxpayers across Minnesota. Here's how it works. When the residents in Businessville pass a levy referendum for their schools, the corporations, shopping malls, and office complexes help pay that bill. Neighboring hometown has very little business development. When residents in hometown pass a school levy for an identical amount of money, they pay 2 or 3 times as much. You heard right. That's double or even triple the dollars for the same amount of school levy money. Homeowners in Businessville get a tax discount that is sanctioned and approved by state lawmakers. Under this same unfair system, if levy taxes are equal in the two towns, Businessville schools get 2 or 3 times more levy revenue than hometown schools. This allows Businessville schools their students more opportunities and a higher quality education than students in neighboring hometowns who have larger class sizes, fewer music and arts programs, outdated technology, no extra help for kids who need it, and fewer advanced courses. It's time to end this unfair system of taxation and support equity in education.
Tell your legislators to equalize education funding to make Minnesota's system of funding public schools fair. For more information, go to schoolsforequity.org. All public school students, like me, must have equal access to a high-quality education, regardless of where they live in Minnesota.
So that is, we're using this out in different districts, and we're finding that it is really resonating with parents. But I'm going to go ahead and talk a little bit about SPEED. We are a coalition of 60, actually we just got another district now, 61 school districts. And our districts serve 250,000 children, which means it's 1/3 of the K-12 students in the state of Minnesota. And there's a couple common characteristics that bring our districts together, and actually we're all hometown districts, and you guys are kind of a shining example of what a SPEED district is. First of all, we tend to have because of our student demographics and the way the state funds our schools, we don't have a lot of kids or circumstances where we get extra categorical funding. So because we then get the very least in, fall well below state average in funding. And the other problem we have is that our districts tend to be property poor. And this doesn't mean that everybody in the district is poor. It means that when you add up your industrial, your commercial, and your residential property, you fall way below average. And then when you want to make up with that inadequate state funding with levy dollars, it's really hard sometimes to pass those because the tax burden falls so heavily on your residential and small business owners. But regardless of that, this is what we work for. And when I first started, we always hear that education is, or Minnesota's the education state. I thought this is already what it was, but this is where we need to get to. Sadly, this isn't how it is yet. But we want equal access to a quality education for all students in Minnesota, regardless of where they live. And we want legislation that ensures an equitable distribution of resources. We don't believe that every district should get exactly the same thing, but we believe all districts should have the resources that they need to provide for our students. We want a property tax system that is fair. We're going to be using referendums to fund our schools. We got to be sure that that system is fair and that we don't have extra tax burdens in property poor districts. And this one always makes me chuckle a little bit because I do spend quite a bit of time at the Capitol. And I hear accountable a lot. We want to hold our teachers accountable. We want to hold our administrators and our school board. We really need to hold our elected officials accountable to provide the resources so that our school districts can provide the services our students need. And then we also need that educated and engaged community, and that's what I do. We need to get everybody who really values education to be a voice for their kids. In the political world, it's the squeaky wheel. So that's what we do, is encourage community involvement and school districts to be involved. And the thing, to get a little background, we have to establish, I think, first, if it's appropriate to expect Minnesota to pay for our schools, and the answer to that is absolutely. Because the state constitution, which, by the way, is the job description for the governor and the legislature, only calls out two specific areas of government that the state must fund. One is the trunk highway systems, and the other one is education. And so it tells us that the stability of the Republican form of government depends on the people, and it's the duty of the legislature to establish that general and uniform system of public schools. And they can secure by taxation or otherwise that efficient system. So duty is a strong word. It's not one of those words that at the end of the session, if you get around to it, think about education, and it doesn't tell them that they can do their pet projects. They really need to focus on education. The problem, then, is that the state funding has not kept up with inflation. Here in Lester Prairie, 62% of your funding comes from the state, and that has been a dwindling source. More than 90% of school districts currently have referenda. But the problem is that local school levies are not equal. Depending on where you live, it costs more or less for the levy dollar. These are the two pieces that I think are the most shining example of how the financial challenges you guys have. This is the basic formula. It's the per pupil dollar amount that you get for every kid that comes through your door. So what happens is the legislature sets that. And this is, because it's funding for every pupil, it's intended to be the foundation of our high-quality school system. And how has the legislature done with that since the 1990s? The green line shows what the basic formula is, and currently it's $5,224 per pupil. And the red line shows what it would have been if it merely had kept up with inflation. So over 2 decades, we have seen over $2,000 per kid discrepancy in funding. We spend $2,000 less on our students today than we did just 2 decades ago. And then the other challenge for us is unfunded mandates. Now, special education has been challenging. I think our schools have done an excellent job helping our special ed kids meet their full potential. The problem is we have this huge unfunded cost because neither the state or federal government has paid for the extra costs that are associated with those mandated services. So currently, this is in millions of dollars across the state, but that roughly translates to about $600 a kid that you have to kind of take out of your general ed to do that, and that is just unacceptable to cause that much of a discrepancy between what is funded and what's not. So what has Lester Prairie done? You guys, the blue line shows state funding. You can see how that's dropped off since 2003. And the green line shows levies. Now, that's mainly your voter-approved levy, but it also includes discretionary levies like health and safety and some of those in there, so it's a little bit more than what you see. But you can see that only through that levy effort that your community has supported that you have been able to stay a little bit above where you were. So if you had not passed that referendum, you would be spending and having less money here since 2003. So districts are relying on these voter-approved referendums, and that mostly comes through property taxes. And one of the very annoying things, back in 2005, under pressure from districts can easily pass referendums, that the legislature has always had a cap because they're really their constitutional obligation is to provide a uniform system of public schools. And if you allow this huge discrepancy of funding from one neighboring district to another merely on your ability to pass a referendum, that is no longer uniform. But under pressure from districts that could easily pass referendum, they raised that amount, that levy cap, so that every district can go out and get $1,600. And now that's a pretty huge disparity that we put back in our system. But the other thing is the cost to the taxpayer per levy dollar is based on the individual property wealth of the district. So if you do not have considerable business development to help you out, then that gets very expensive for that levy dollar. This is how it looks in real life. The state says you can go get $1,600 for referendum, and if you were running a levy campaign and you were talking to a senior citizen on a fixed income, or you were talking to a family of 4, and you would explain why you need the money and what you're going to do with it, but then you always get that first question, how much is it going to cost me? And if you're talking to that family or senior citizen in Hopkins, they would pay $150 a year per $100,000 home value. That very same family here in Lester Prairie pays $385. So you're paying 2 times more for the same levy dollar. And, the thing that I say about that when I bring it out is it's not just complaining about dollars. My example is I live in Centennial. I'm a property poor district. Centennial is in C. And we have Mounds View, which is property poor, or Businessville. And we pay within pennies the same amount for a referendum, but they get $700 more a kid. And that means that when I was talking to my legislator, when he was so excited because when they first passed the referendum in Mounds View, that's where he lives. He also represents both school districts. He was telling me how excited his wife was, because she got put on the committee that was going to bring language to the elementary school. And we introduced language in Centennial in 9th grade. When is the kid most effectively probably going to learn it? The earlier they begin. And then, I don't know if you guys are familiar with STEM. All our business leaders are telling us the future